Welcome to today's webinar, The Biology of Human Sustainability. We are so excited to have you all join us as we delve into this topic with Jonathan from CHX Performance. A brief introduction before I hand it over to Jonathan. My name is Alex Smith, co-founder of the Sustainability Group. We launched our core solution FuturePlus a little over 18 months ago, and FuturePlus is our sustainability measurement and ESG reporting platform that helps companies understand, measure, manage, improve and report past actions and quantify their ambition. Tyner, also from the Sustainability Group, will be moderating today's session, and please do not hesitate to ask any questions in the chat section during the presentation. We intend to leave plenty of time at the end for a Q&A. A little on today's topic and why we think this conversation is crucial for any business that is looking to make a change, particularly long-term, resilient and sustainable change. We live in a world where businesses face extraordinary challenges, from geopolitical uncertainties to climate change and disruptive technologies. It's clear that people, their knowledge, skills and well-being have become the differentiator between success and failure. However, despite employees' increasing importance, many individuals need help to maintain the high levels of health and performance that have become expected of them. Economic pressures, personal uncertainties, and a rapidly changing world have exacerbated employees' difficulties as well. Simultaneously, businesses are expected to have a greater understanding and management of their social and environmental impact to meet stakeholder expectations. We work with CHX Performance because implementing new and positive actions into a business requires change. Businesses must recognise the connection between employee performance, good mental health, and the ability to make positive organisational changes. Embedding sustainability principles into an organisation requires leadership, innovation, belief in the value of change, and empowering those who must adapt to new ways of operating. Providing the right environment during periods of uncertainty allows businesses to make effective changes, be they cultural, strategic, or sustainability focused. And there are so many benefits that can be unlocked by managing employees' mental and emotional well-being, enhanced engagement, improved innovation, and greater success among these times of uncertainty. Before we dive deeper into this topic, let's take a moment to introduce Jonathan from CHX Performance. CHX is a leadership development consultancy delivering programs to global and local organisations in humanising leadership and reframing mental health. They're grounded in science, with one of the co-founders a globally renowned professor in cognition and neuroscience. Jonathan articulates so well the issues that businesses and individuals face, so with no further ado, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Right, let's get stuck into the biology of human sustainability. So there's just huge amounts of data and research being published now and increasingly around the area of emotions. You can see the last two words here, emotional support. This was an incredible report from Ernst & Young and with Oxford University. And they are clearly identifying key ingredients to modern business, for ideas and ingenuity, for change and transformation, for innovation, in order for businesses to thrive. At the heart of that is people. And what is it that people need? They need their needs being met to be at their best, which we'll touch on. And that's things like inclusion, like equity, like empathy, engagement. All of these things are felt. And it's this biology of feelings that we will explore and just touch upon it in this session. And, we can see why we talk about feelings. A core piece of information is from the World Health Organization meta-analysis. 80% of poor mental health stems from mood and emotion dysregulation. So if we flip that, clearly good mental health and all that comes from that, all those things that we talked about, innovation, inclusion, equity, sense of belonging, that comes from people who are able to regulate their mood and their emotion. Mood and emotion are key predictors of performance and of mental health. And we know that when emotional well-being, emotions are paid attention to, it has a huge impact on success and performance of businesses. Again, there's so much data, I'm really just skimming the surface, but productivity is higher in organizations. This isn't about mental health in organizations has been viewed as something on the side, fixing the people that are broken, probably broken by the culture of the organization that they work in. Whereas actually we want to focus far more on reframing mental health to aspiring to have the good mental health is critical. for high performance, for successful transformation, for productivity, for people feeling good, feeling that they belong, feeling that they're engaged, feeling that they're valued. All of these things are felt. And interestingly, the role of the manager, I love this statistic, mental health, the manager's impact on employees' mental health, their leader, their manager's impact is the same as that of their spouse at nearly 70%. It's not surprising, but it's really good to see some data around these really important points. And again, focusing on poor mental health, on burnout and stress, we can see on this data from McKinsey that leaders and people leaders are very stressed. So when we think about the data beforehand, that nearly 70% of people experience poor mental health as a result of their manager, these managers are likely to be the ones that are inflicting, if you like, not deliberately, but inflicting that poor mental health. These are people who are going to find it very difficult to lead by how they make others feel. And they are likely to make people feel not good, and therefore move towards the left-hand side of that continuum. Nearly half of senior leaders and managers are not feeling good themselves. And when you are not feeling good yourselves, stressed, burnout, exhausted, you are likely to make those around you. You're not going to be empathic, and you're not going to be helping them to feel good. So this is the continuum that I referenced. We would love to be, both individually and for our people, to be towards the right-hand side. We would also not want to be stuck towards the left-hand side. But what this continuum showed most importantly, and I think one of the most important things, is that we all have mental health all of the time. I can assure you that quite right now, and certainly half an hour ago, I was sort of in that third to the column to the left. I was feeling, and still feeling, a little bit agitated and anxious. I want this webinar to go well. That agitation and anxiety is creating biological stress, which in turn is releasing energy into me to hopefully give me that focus and acuity to do this well. So that anxiety is not unhelpful. It's not a problem, and it's completely normal and predictable. So moving up and down this continuum is really normal. I don't know if there's any young parents on this call, but you are certainly going to be in the left-hand side, fatigued and sleep deprived several times over the first few years of your child. And it's completely normal and predictable. But it's when you get stuck in one of those left-hand columns for a prolonged period of time that we see poor mental health. And from an organizational perspective, we want people to be high performers on the right-hand side, that high performance, people feeling good, feeling energetic, engaged. But as people don't feel good because of likely how their manager, their leader makes them feel, they will move down this continuum, they will withdraw. So this is where psychological safety sits. They won't contribute. If they have great ideas, they'll sit on them. If they have fears or concerns over safety or procedures, they will sit on them because they are withdrawing or disengaging. And at the end, we have burnout and departure. And again, depending on how people love their culture and what their company does, how valued and important they feel the company is. If they don't believe in what the company does, they will depart. But if they're like teachers or nurses and really know that what they do is meaningful, then they'll probably stay and work through this, and ultimately that will lead to burnout. So here we have 4 profiles that show us different moods. This is a picture of mood. I'll show you a little bit towards the end on our app that we use with clients. But mood data is real and meaningful, and it predicts, as I said, it predicts how we will perform and how we will behave. We have used the algorithm, the questions to create these profiles have been used in clinical psychology and psychiatry for over 50 years. And mood is clinically predictive of health and performance. And you can see 6 components of mood: tension, depression, anger, vigor, fatigue, and confusion, and how they interplay to create these very different profiles, which in turn create very different leader behaviors. The one on the right-hand side, the leader with high vigor and all of the negative mood components below the population average, is a leader who's going to lead successful transformations, is going to get people to follow them. They have the capacity to be empathic and to be authentic, to be engaging, inclusive, and equitable. And as we move down towards the left, much as we did with the continuum, these leaders' behaviors will drive people to withdrawal, to disengagement, and ultimately to departure. Not just their people, but actually the leader themselves will probably, when we get to that far left, if they have that mood profile over a sustained period of time, be that weeks, several months, or even years, at some point that will motivate them. That biological stress that mood determines will motivate them to leave. This is them doing well and feeling well. And as a leader, you are likely to engage people, change. You are likely to be aware of how they're feeling and therefore be able to respond. So this is where leaders can be emotionally engaged and emotionally management. And this isn't about emotional intelligence, which I think cynically is sort of slightly used in a manipulative way. This is about being emotionally literate, being able to feel, so your empathy is dialed up, and you are able to have a discussion and support the feelings of those around you. Then as we move towards the left, the one on the middle right, focused, high quality, unaware and controlling. For some people, this is them at their absolute best. They love being in this profile with that elevated tension. They really can get a lot of stuff done, but it can be at the cost of not being able to focus on other people. But if you've got a morning where you've got a huge checklist and you've really got to pile through the work, a profile like this is really going to be your friend. This is a really helpful profile. And a lot of people work hard and thrive off that tension, and they work hard to achieve that. So skipping breakfast is likely to create that kind of tension. I wouldn't advocate it necessarily as part of health, but it creates tension, which can drive focus. Now we get a little bit more destructive as we move towards the left. So that the center left, again, you will get a lot of stuff done, but you are beginning to view humans as mere resources in the machine to get stuff done. There is going to be no empathy here. People are not going to be treated well. If they do come and speak to you, they probably will get the palm of your hand and a no, not now type of response. You would be a disaster as a leader trying to lead any change here. You would not take people with you. Yet for many leaders that we work with, this is a profile that they live with on a very regular basis. And their biology that determines this profile is really not their friend. And this is a problematic leader profile. And then finally, that profile continues to destabilize, if you like, where you then end up with an inverted iceberg on the far left. And this is someone who will withdraw, they'll lock themselves away, very, very negative, very tired, poor quality work. This is someone who's in need of a proper break, because if this continues for a period of time, which could be a week or two for some, it could be a month for others, in some cases, maybe even a year or two, people can live with this, but they will burn out at this point. So we use mood and profiling mood as extraordinarily important data to alert us to our performance and to our ability to sustain that level of performance. We work with a very large global law firm, and one of the senior partners quite disparagingly said of his lawyers, well, we pay them like professional footballers, but why on earth can't they just perform like that all the time? And it was a gift that he gave me, because I made it very clear that professional footballers spend about 5 days of their week focusing on restoration and 2 days a week focusing on performance. We expect them to perform for 90 minutes at excellence, maybe twice, possibly 3 times a week maximum. In this law firm, they were expecting that 6, maybe 7 days a week for maybe 12 hours a day, and paying no attention to restoration and wondering why burnout was a risk. So you can't ignore your biology and the consequences it has on performance and on behavior. So I'm now going to introduce again, quite high level, a very important model published by Professor Chris Beattie late last year in the peer-reviewed journal Sustainability. And this is about sustainable mental health, which puts mood and the management of mood and emotion right at the heart of restoring our biology, which in turn ensures good mental health. So at the top we have homeostasis, the biological, the sum of the myriad biological processes that keep us alive: thermoregulation, blood sugar management, endocrine management, everything that's going on inside of us to keep us well. And all of these processes are operating within a bandwidth that would indicate normal, healthy living. You know, we're doing well and indicating that we are fit for survival. If we move outside of that bandwidth, say we go higher, like our blood sugar spikes, or we go lower, our blood sugar drops, the signal that we get that we're out of homeostatic balance is mood. Mood is an internal biofeedback. So our mood changes. So if we've got excessive blood sugar, we might get a little bit giddy, overexcited, etc. That mood tells us that we might need to restore. So that could be go and do a lot of work and use that energy up and get back into homeostasis. Or it could be, if it's low mood, obviously you're hungry, go and eat, restore and get back into homeostasis. So you close off that loop. But what is critical here is that mood is biological stress. It's stress telling us to focus our attention on dealing with the homeostatic imbalance that has got us out of homeostasis. If we do not restore, the biological stress remains with us. And this is where most people sit in the workplace. Often they're not even recognizing the mood. So our ability to read ourselves is de-skilled. We all have the genetic capacity to read ourselves, to be self-impacted. We all have that capacity, but the skill is neuron-based. And if we don't do it, we de-skill ourselves. We lose our ability to do that. So we consciously regulate. So the absolute classic is you're a bit tired. So you consciously, you regulate by having a coffee. So you don't rest, which is what your mood is telling you to do. You're telling you to slow down and reserve your energy because you're depleted. You think, right, I can cheat that. I'll go and grab a coffee, which, as we know, does not give you actually any energy at all unless you have a lot of sugar in it. It actually just blocks your adenosine receptors, convincing your brain, tricking your brain that you're not as tired as you believe you are. And there's a price to pay. The price is that you do this over time and you are accumulating biological stress because you are not restoring your mood. That over a period of time reduces metabolic and cognitive capacity, so that reduces your physical energy and your mental acuity. It creates a negative bias, and I'm going to talk about that when we look at the emotion external biofeedback loop on the top right, because that's a critical role to play. And it leads to disengagement, average work, and being unempathic. All the things that we saw in those disturbed mood profiles, and all the things we saw on the left-hand side of the mental health continuum. We then have on the top right, the external biofeedback, which is our emotions. And this is, again, a biological signal, biological stress, which throughout evolution was critical to us in our social survival context. We are a very social species, the most successful social species that's ever existed. And emotions are the vehicle that have driven, underpin our sociality. And we have 5 emotional needs. We have a need to be included. We have a need for equity. We have a need for certainty. We have a need for attachment or being valued. And we have a need for autonomy, being in control of the resources that we have for our survival. And we are constantly scanning our social environment to assess how well those needs are being met. If they are being met, great, we have an absence of emotional signals, we feel content. If we feel any of those being triggered, which in the workplace happens almost certainly every day, we will receive an emotion. And to turn off the biological stress of the emotion, the external biofeedback loop, we need to resolve that emotion. So Alex, I'm looking, I always have to look at someone when I'm talking. If I was in a meeting and I'd been asked to prepare a board paper and Alex was chairing that meeting, and then she just said, "Oh, Jonathan, I'm really sorry, we've run out of time. Can we do yours next week?" I, of course, in the meeting go, "Yeah, of course, that's fine, Alex." Inside, I'd be seething. I'd be very triggered. I would feel unvalued. I would feel that my autonomy has been hijacked because now I've got to stress about this from other, and so on. So possibly all 5 of my mammal needs by that casual comment from Alex, who would never do this in real life, obviously. That casual comment from Alex as a leader has triggered all those emotions. Now, unless I went to Alex and said, "I've just got to tell you, Alex, how that made me feel," I don't turn off that biological stress. That remains with me. That in turn destabilizes my homeostasis and over time impacts mood. So you have this absolute interconnectivity between mood and emotion. So dealing with emotions in work, emotional authenticity, this isn't about flouncing around the office and being emotional. It's being authentic. "Alex, you made me feel like this, and it's important you know that." Alex would be mortified and would then never do that again. And therefore, she would be more conscious of leading by how she makes people feel, which in turn supports me feeling engaged, motivated, and able to perform at a much higher level. So this is these are the critical underpinning of sustainable mental health, which is the biology of human sustainability. And in the workplace, we've worked with organizations that have legacy cultures in pockets where literally mood and emotion are viewed as unprofessional and need to be left at home, through to we are really wanting people to bring their whole selves to work. And we understand that this is critical, but perhaps we don't have the language or the confidence, the shared language and confidence with which to have the critical conversations that are so important in both restoring mood and in resolving emotions. So this is the model that underpins the entirety of our work in many respects. And when we work with clients, getting them to bring this to life through their business practices is what we aspire to achieve. So I'm just going to quickly touch on the biology of stress and how it impacts our ability to work and engage with work. So when we are in homeostasis, we're biologically balanced, we have optimal positive stress. We have to remember that our bodies manufacture stress hormones and pump them into our body every day. Cortisol is produced every day from the adrenal gland. We should wake up with high level of cortisol at around about 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning, which is our peak cortisol. And then it slowly drifts off through the day, so that by the time we come to go to sleep between after 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we have really low levels of cortisol, which help facilitate falling to sleep. Cortisol, by the way, is one of the biggest biological indicators of burnout. If people have a flattened cortisol curve, so low in the morning and relatively high at night, it's a very key indicator of early onset of burnout. So we're in biological balance. We've got this gray column in the middle of eustress, positive stress. This is where we can do a lot of work and it feels good. You know, there are so many days where we go to work, we pile through an amazing amount of work and it feels great, and we go home and we're still feeling good. We can go home and be a nice person. And work is good for us. You know, we are absolutely not advocates. We cannot work with law firms to say you need to work less. You know, that's just not going to work. So how do you get people to operate in high performing environments and still feel good? Focusing on homeostasis is the starting point. But if we then just look at this, you've skipped a couple of meals. Let's say you're intermittently fasting. I bet there's at least one person on this call who's trying around with that. It's very common and very normal, and I've got nothing bad to say about it. But let's say you're doing that and you're due to have your first meal at midday, and then suddenly your day gets hijacked and you've got a crisis meeting. So you skip that meal. Suddenly, your body is going to be in distress. So your homeostatic balance is reduced. And if you look at that thin gray strip on the right, That is work that yesterday felt good, and you did it and felt good. Today, that workload is creating stress. So you are likely to get through the day, but are you going to be a nice person when you get home, having worked through stressful workload? No. But it's not the extra work. It's not even extra work. It's not the workload that is causing that stress. It's your biological stress from being under-resourced. And when you're biologically stressed, all external events appear stressful. So this is a really important example, really, of bringing to life the biology of stress and its impact on sort of sustainable high performance. If we don't resource ourselves, how can we expect to perform and engage at the level that our fast-paced, fast-change organizations demand of us? I also love the one on the left. We work with a biopharma, and they were right on the cusp of launching a really important drug. So they'd recruited a team of quite a large team, and right at the last minute, the drug failed a hurdle. This team were twiddling their thumbs, and the distress and the poor mental health of that team was extraordinary. So underemployment, underengagement is just as a powerful source of poor mental health and biological stress. So we explore our brain. We use Paul McLean. Excuse me, I just got. Blow my nose. We don't have brains in simple compartments. This is an extremely facile picture of a brain in many respects, but it's a good metaphor based in pretty good understanding of neuroscience. And we think about our lizard brain, which is some 400 million years of evolution. It's our brain stem. It communicates through mood. And when we are at our best, so when we are restored, when we've eaten well, when we've slept well, when we've had good social engagement, when we've had daylight, and when we've been moving, which are all core foundations of good mood, we call that our personal ecosystem. The lizard brain is urgent, agile, decisive. It's really great. You can make accurate, fast decisions. Your mammal brain, your limbic brain system, an extraordinarily complex system, which communicates again, just like mood, unconsciously with emotion. And your mammal brain here is empathic. It's engaged and it's altruistic, which from a leader perspective, this is a leader that will follow. This is a leader that can communicate and drive sustainable change, can drive loyalty. This is a leader who will create psychological safety and where you will get discretionary effort. And your executive brain, which from an evolutionary perspective is some 200,000 years old, so really quite a beta model in many respects. And I don't know if I'm being a bit whimsical, it could, you could argue, may well be a terrible evolutionary development as we drive ourselves towards human extinction. I'm not worried about the planet. The planet will survive, and lichen and many other creatures will love it, but whether humans do is another matter. Anyway, our executive brain is logical and ethical, and it's at its best. But then when we look on a bad day, this is a day, I don't know if any of you on the call are young parents, where you've had 3, 4, 5 nights in a row where for one reason or another, it's just been hideous. So you are really done. This is what you could, you're definitely going to be a lizard. You're going to be territorial. You're going to get to work late and someone's parked in your space or someone's at your desk, and you're going to be really angry about it in a quite irrational way. You're going to be hostile and cold. You're going to view people as resources. And as a mammal, your mammal brain, it's going to be hypersensitive to those 5 mammal needs. You'll be seeing threat. You'll be seeing exclusion. You'll be seeing inequity where it isn't, because you are so hypersensitive. And as an executive, you're going to be hideous. You're going to be controlling. So you're going to be triggering everybody's mammal needs. You're going to be triggering autonomy. You're not going to be seeing, you're not going to be feeling how they're feeling. This is a bad place to be. Go away and do some work on your own. It's probably the safest thing to do, or actually better off try and grab a nap. This is a brain that really needs restoring. So that's in essence an overview of the biology, if you like, of sustainable mental health. We call our program Scientist of Yourself. As Alex said, it's founded in the work of our Director of Science, Professor Chris Beattie, and a couple of other scientists. We work with a wonderful scientist at Oxford, Professor Emma Cohen, who works a lot in social energetics, which is a very exciting area. And we have a tool that we use, as I've shown you some of the graphs of it, the Mojo tool. So we have practical tools and application to bring this biology to life. Yeah, so that's me done. I hope that's given you a bit of a whistle-stop tour in some of the biology that underpins sustainable performance and sustainable transformation.
Thank you, Jonathan. And it's a circular thing as well. So a lot of people on the call I can see are either FuturePlus clients or involved in the arena of sustainability. And sometimes when we think about sustainability, we look at ESG, we look at the FuturePlus 5 themes, and sometimes we forget that people are behind all of those, right? People are behind the economic drives that we're doing in our company. People are behind the environmental efforts. So focusing on people's sustainability, focusing on your workforce is a circular thing. It will only drive more impact because people are energized, people are coming into work ready to implement all of the sustainability roadmap and ambitions that you have, as of other ambitions too. I can see that we're starting to get some comments through into the chat, but one question that we had as well for you, Jonathan, is we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion and people sustainability around diversity and inclusion. How does the biological approach kind of deal with that? And especially now, increasingly, we're talking about neurodiversity as well, and companies are really aware of neurodiversity within their workforce. So how does that biological element work with those arenas?
That's quite a challenging question, but it's a good one. It works very well, actually. If you remember the 5 mammal needs that I talked about, 2 of those are inclusion. We have a very powerful need to be included, and we have a need for equity, to have equal and fair access to resources to ensure our survival. So to 2 of those, if you think about D&I, you know, the equity and inclusion are biological in root. And when you work with leaders, when equity and inclusion are driven by HR and they feel a little bit like pie chart and numbers, as opposed to biological phenomena, when you give it a biological foundation, it's very powerfully engaging. There's a mechanistic understanding of why inclusion and equity are so critical to good businesses. It's suddenly not a HR directive. It's just good leadership behavior, because you yourself know what it's like when you're not included or have equitable access to resources. Well, what are you doing to the people around you? And diversity, there is a biological description that we bring to life around diversity. When you look at populations of animals, they reach a critical mass where they fall into so low they don't have the diversity of they don't have the genetic diversity to survive, that they are unresilient, and they suddenly just disappear. The path from critical mass to extinction is very rapid. And it's the same, we say the same when you think about that biological understanding of diversity, of genetic diversity. Well, a business is the same. If you have great diversity in your business, your ability to adapt and change is enhanced, and therefore there's a real imperative learning from biology in that sense. From neurodiversity perspective, the science is universal. So we work globally, and those 5 mammal needs are the same for everyone. The need to have social resources is the same for everyone. But many people assume social resources means social life. It does not. Having someone that cares about you and that you care about is a social resource. People with whom share knowledge with you is a powerful social resource. And being with those people makes you feel good. It is restorative. So the reason we call our program Scientist of Yourself, whilst the science is universal and very democratic, it narrows down and applies to you and your personal and professional context.
Fascinating. And I guess it also leads to kind of lots of organizations view diversity and inclusion as a compliance route, right? We write all these policies and we publish these policies, and that's the kind of tick box exercise. But as we know, and as you know, that's not necessarily the case. So it's really about integrating these policies, which are necessary. They do need to be there, with how do we walk the walk? And I think you guys are amazing explaining how leaders can do that and how we can become more inclusive, which I think leads on really well to our next question that we've had actually is, what are some of the main reasons that organizations would want to work with you, and kind of what can they benefit from having a scientific approach to people's sustainability?
Okay, thank you, Tana. We get a number of reasons why organizations come to us. Some firms, it's our people we're worried that our people are burning out. We want to have a preventative approach to that. Others, it's humanizing leadership. So how can we develop our leaders to lead by how they make other people feel? Again, so we think about the language around, all businesses would want to associate and aspire to be associated with characteristics such as engaged and trusting and authentic, and all of these words around the modern HR agenda. And as I said earlier, they are all felt. They are all feelings. So how do we develop a literacy around that? And I think having a science-based mechanistic understanding to those slightly esoteric words really gives people a way to grab hold of them and therefore role model them and actually enact them, rather than say you need to, business leaders say, well, we need our people to be empathic, like it's a switch that you can turn on. I can assure you, if your people are overworked or they're not sleeping, the likelihood of them being empathic is really, really low.
Perfect. I think, sorry, technical difficulties as always with these Zoom webinars. I think we've got a message that's come through from Alex, so she'll read it out, the question.
Yeah, we had a question from Jazz around, you were talking around, food and missing meals and that fasting piece. And Jazz, I don't know if you wanted to, but it was around if food is mood, which is all related to mental health, how do you convince your workforce to better manage their diets without becoming overly preachy or stepping over boundaries? I suppose it's that, how do you educate people to allow themselves to have good mental health without telling them what to do? I think I'd probably summarize that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We really try very hard not to be preachy. We are not professing to have the answers, and actually by paying attention to mood and emotion, you have all the data that you need to understand how well you are doing. So we will say, do what works for you. We work with so many people, and we've hardly met anyone who doesn't really know what the sort of a balanced diet looks like. We're not here to train people in nutrition. Well, there's too much science out there on nutrition, and nearly all of it conflicting. And so it's very difficult, but work out if skipping breakfast and then you're having your first meal at midday and then having another meal works for you, great. But how do you know it works? How do you know how you're performing? Mood is really powerful data in telling you how that is working out for you. But if it feels good, that's okay. But don't do it just because someone out there said, oh yeah, do intermittent fasting, it's great. It might feel awful. I've tried it. It was a disaster. So don't follow fads, follow your instinct, trust yourself a lot more. I use a phrase with our clients an awful lot, is that we're not going to tell you anything that your granny hasn't told you, but we will give you a really robust scientific underpinning of why what she told you makes a great deal of sense. And I think once people have that science, it kind of just gives them a bit more of a permission, if you like, a bit more agency to treat these things which are serious, to treat them a bit more seriously.
Fab. And I might hand over to Jazz to ask another question, unless anyone else has one. But a question from me, Jazz, there is, looking at the names on the board here, there's quite a high level of females that have joined the group and are listening to the webinar, which I think is interesting unto itself. And thank you to everyone else that joined as well. But one of the questions I wanted to push you to is that communication of how that made you feel. And if you've got any tips or guides or insights into how to deal with that, particularly when you're dealing with people outside of the organization. So I often find personally that a lot of that how you makes me feel comes from our clients or our customers or our suppliers. And that is a much harder piece to communicate to someone that you don't necessarily have that sort of same relationship with, and you have to build a very positive relationship at all times in order to keep them as clients, customers, suppliers, whatever, whoever they may be. And I wonder if you had any sort of how you deal with that internally when you feel certain things and it triggers certain emotions. What's the best way to go through that? And then if it's right with you, Jazz, once Jonathan's answered that, I'll hand over to you to ask your other question.
Thank you, Alex. That's quite a tricky question. We get asked that an awful lot, because when we work with leaders, they say, well, that's all well and good, but when you're talking about me having a conversation with, say, my boss on the exco, how to resolve how they've made me feel, that's conflict, and I'm not prepared for that. And firstly, it has, if you are in a negative bias mood, if you are feeling low, you're going to be feeling much more negative about this than perhaps it is. We would certainly say that actually an authentic conversation is the critical bedrock of trust and engagement, and the quality of the relationship you have with that leader will be enhanced by having a conversation with that person. It's never easy, but when you think about psychological safety, a psychologically safe environment is not one devoid of anxiety or stress. It's where anxiety and stress is dealt with in an authentic way. And what we do know, because of our pro-social nature, our sociality, if I was to say to you, Alex, this is how you've made me feel, this is how that meeting made me feel, that authenticity, you would feel it, your empathy would feel it, and what I'm saying would be congruent with what you are feeling. It's extraordinarily hard for you at that point not to behave in an altruistic, responsive manner, because we are hardwired to do so. Doing so would actually trigger quite a serious wave of some really wonderful neurotransmitters in you, not least of which is endogenous opioids, which are really quite euphoric. We are rewarded by helping in that sense. So trust people's pro-sociality. It's a lot more powerful than you think, and those conversations are the bedrock of psychological safety and trusting and trusted authentic relationships.
Jazz, if you had your question, please feel free to unmute, or if anyone else as well, we can utilize the hand raise function if anyone would like to speak or ask any questions.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Jonathan, really fascinating, absolutely brilliant. One of the things that stood out very much to me, maybe because I'm a woman of colour, I'm Punjabi, I'm Sikh, is in the workforce, how do you factor in the cultural and maybe more prevalent, the religious mental health issues when you're building an environment that is meant to be very diverse? My experiences have been very different to what you're talking about when you're looking at the biology of mental health, especially good mental health in working environments. But if we're working towards instilling better management, how do you factor those issues in as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to give a powerful answer to that, Jazz, because I don't really fully understand the context, and I certainly don't want to be light on it. But the science of mood and emotion is universal. We are all the same species, and our underpinning biology drives the same. How that's manifested through cultural evolution clearly creates differences that we have in diversity. If you are a person in an organization who continually feels inequitably treated or not included, those emotional triggers unresolved over time will create a disturbed mood profile, which in turn sends you towards the left-hand side of the mental health continuum if you're unable to turn off those biofeedback loops. So that's where my empathy lies. That is what will be happening to people who feel unincluded or inequitably treated. Giving leaders and managers biological insight to the need for equity and inclusion is a very powerful way of engaging people, and allowing that to be expressed in people's personal and professional contexts gives the space for religious or cultural diversities to play out, if you like, around things like diet, around things like sleep. When we work with people through Ramadan, clearly their biology is going to be manifestly changed through Ramadan. And understanding why that was really helpful for a lot of leaders. They knew it would be, but understanding why suddenly gave them a very different way of engaging with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because there is a lack of leadership from people of different cultural backgrounds. Would you say that would be an effective way of managing, these emotions within the workforce, having that understanding? Do you think you need people from diverse backgrounds to be more leaders? Because there is a lack of it, isn't there?
I mean, that's a much bigger question than just mental health. I think we need greater diversity at all strata in businesses for all kinds of reasons. Hence the continuing never-ending drive to achieve that. And I think organizational mental health would absolutely benefit from having greater diversity at a senior level. There's quite a lot of research that we've done that we haven't published around female leadership and stress responses that would have a profound difference on organizational mental health. So I cannot see how it cannot help. Is that double negative? I think it can only help by having more diverse people.
And just to reiterate as well, so FuturePlus as a team, we've worked with Jonathan and with Damien and with CHX to do kind of workshops on our mental health and our people's sustainability. And one thing that really drove home from those workshops was that communication and understanding piece. Sometimes we feel excluded from the group for a very personal reason that others might not be aware of. And that doesn't mean that that thing is perceived or kind of in our heads. If we feel it, it's real. So if I feel different from the group for, say, socioeconomic reasons or religious reasons or nationality reasons, it might not be that the group is excluding me for those reasons, but if I feel it, that's a really real perception and a really real feeling. And as soon as we are made aware of that and we talk to other people about it, and I speak to Alex about it, or I speak to whoever it is, I speak to the team about it, and we are all aware of the things that make each other feel excluded, we can then work to mitigate against those feelings and those triggers. But it might have been that someone never knew kind of why person A in their team was unengaged or feeling, not speaking up in meetings as much. And sometimes it's a quick change. It's hosting your meeting in a different way or figuring out the inclusivity needs of that person. But I think as leaders, sometimes we can't figure it all out as well. So which is why that communication piece is so important, I think, and something that we really benefited from actually from that workshop. I can see some more comments in the chat. If anyone has any kind of last comments, last queries, last questions, please do feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask Jonathan kind of those burning questions that you may have. I guess one last one from us as well is kind of what are some of the examples of impact that you've had? I know sometimes when we talk about sustainability as well, it can be kind of the planet is ending and everything is kind of going wrong, but sometimes it helps to focus on those elements of impact and those positive stories. So what's kind of a positive story that we can all leave with of the impact that you guys have had at CHX?
I think for me, and the reason why I love my job, why I even gave up teaching to do it, when you see an 8-year-old child suddenly understand column subtraction, and the look on their face is one of the best things you can have as a teacher, where you get this doing this program, you get grown-ups suddenly realizing why they feel like they do. I had a workshop this morning, and this lovely lady, she said she's got a very anxious teenage daughter, and she watched some of our content and used what we've done in the program. And they're now really good partners in practicing some of the things, and they've had a profound impact on the quality of their life by going for walks together and by eating meals together. They've made a pact to do it. And for me, wow, you know, that's what I love the most. Yes, we have big cultural impact, but when you hear those personal stories, that's what I love the most.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much for everyone who has joined. We'll be sure to circulate some resources after the webinar with some of the insights and key kind of findings that we were talking about today, as well as kind of Jonathan and our emails if anyone wants to get in touch and kind of carry on the conversations post the webinar. But if that's it from everyone, we again thank you and hope everyone has a lovely rest of the day, that we feed ourselves very well, we get enough sleep tonight, and that we all kind of take on these lessons of people sustainability into our personal lives too.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, guys.